You are listening to Scott H. Silverman's Happy Hour, a podcast released on the first 3 Wednesdays of the month. Family crisis, relationship crisis, addiction crisis, no two crisis situations are the same. They vary by family, individual, and relationship. They can encompass complex family dynamics, emotional distress, anger issues, and entitlements, and often involve substance abuse. This podcast addresses these issues and others surrounding the addiction epidemic currently plaguing this country and the world. There is hope and help.
Are you stuck, scared, or unsure of what to do next? If a situation with a loved one, spouse, or even a child has started to spiral, possibly becoming dangerous or threatening, it's time to seek help. My name is Scott H. Silverman. I help families navigate crisis situations. I'm the person you turn to in order to get you and your loved ones unstuck.
Welcome back to the show. This is Scott H. Silverman's Happy Hour, and I'm Michael Glenn Moore, Scott's sometimes whatever co-host that doesn't talk too much but introduces the show. So you have me now. Scott, today is another wonderful day in Louisiana. It's 73 degrees, sun shining. And which is just such a marked difference from 2 weeks ago when we had 3-degree weather. And I know I said this last week. It was just something that was so surprising for us because we never really have weather that bad. And when we do, it's a big one. We had a hurricane and last year that affected my home, and then we had the snowstorm and the ice storm that affected my home. So we've had quite a time with it. How's it going in San Diego?
What's good? It's nice and clear, and we'll ask Bret in a minute because he was on the golf course today what it felt like. But it's in the 60s right now, and we had a little rain here the other day. They almost decided to close schools, but nobody was in them, so they didn't have to. But when it gets wet here, we kind of shut things down. So it's good to see you, Michael. And you get to say things whenever you want to. We might bring you in the middle today just to shake things up a little bit. So anyway, welcome to Scott H. Silverman's Happy Hour. We've put the H in there, by the way, because a colleague of mine in Japan doesn't have an H in his name, and whatever people send stuff to Scott Silverman, he gets it in Japan, and he gets upset with me. So that's what the H is for. Welcome to our happy hour today. We have a very special guest, and we say that because we have no idea what he's going to say today, which is very exciting. We tried to plan it out, but he was compliance resistant, which is okay. That's part of the theme of today's world, is not being too compliant. So, a lot of you will recognize him. He is I'm going to read his bio because it's brief, but it's very colorful. But anyway, our guest today is Bret Boone. And Bret Boone is a former Major League Baseball second baseman. During his career, Bret was a 3-time All-Star, 4-time Gold Glove winner, 2-time Silver Slugger Award winner. He's a third-generation professional athlete. His brother, Aaron Boone, is manager of the New York Yankees. I know Bret has a couple kids, and I'm sure he'll share that story. And he has had I like to say, a colorful life. So, Bret, 2 things. Before you start, I'd like you to share, and it's a challenge for you, just a test question. Do you remember how we met?
No.
Okay.
Through Ruben.
We were introduced through somebody. Do you remember
Ruben?
why?
Ruben?
I don't remember who it was, but they said to me, "Hey, do you have an extra key to handcuffs?" Because they knew I carried handcuffs. I go, "Yeah. Can you bring them over? Can you bring them over? Because we're having Chinese food tonight. Bret needs to free his hands so he can use his chopsticks." So that's just a joke. But anyway, really glad you're here today. So before we go into some of the questions I have, would you mind just sharing with our guests a little bit about who you are, and start wherever you want, what it used to be like, what it's like now, anything you want to share about your colorful career. And I know you've got a book out. Oh, and you also have a podcast, which I understand that if I talk to your producers, if I ask to be on it, I have to wait 2 years because you're so well received with your podcast. And that's BretBoonePodcast.com. BretBoonePodcast.com. So I get my $5 for doing that. So with that, Bret, tell us anything you want us to know about you right now, in your words.
Thanks for having me on. Colorful. I think that's
being. I tried to be gentle. I wanted to be gentle.
Yes. No. To be honest, most of my life has been wonderful. But like a lot of people out there, some bumps in the road, and the bumps for me were mostly post career. So grew up with some great parents and two great siblings. I had a wonderful childhood. My father, before me, was a Major League Baseball player for 19 years. So that was a big part of my life growing up in my youth. Went on to play myself for 14 years. I have 4 kids of my own. I'm single now and have been for the better part of the last decade. What about me? Let me think. I'll tell you, we talk about the colorful part. During my playing days, I was the I guess what you call a typical ball player, and I think not so much typical anymore. It's been changed a little bit, but I was come in after the game, do my press and do my training room, whatever I had to take care of injury wise or maintenance wise after the game, and always followed that up with a couple beers. And as time went on later in my career, turned to vodka a little bit, not vodka tonic after the game. And
Can you be a little more specific? Could you be a little more specific when you say a little bit? Because we have a very diverse audience, and a little bit to some might be a lot to others.
Well, I think it started off, and they say this disease we have in the recovery world, whether it be alcohol, whether it be drugs, opioid, whatever it may be, it is cunning and baffling, definitely, and it's definitely a progressive disease. And I think I was the epitome of that. I think it started. I have a little bit in my family of that addiction thing. And I remember as a young man in my 20s, my grandfather looking at me and kind of, hey, be careful with those beers. Oh, Gramps, what do you know? You don't know anything about it. But like I said, it was very progressive with me. Coming up through high school, I was a typical kid. We go to the parties on the weekends. College, same thing. I was I was on I had a one-track mind in college, and that was playing, following my dreams and becoming a professional baseball player. Through the minor leagues, same thing. I got to the big leagues. I've got an interesting story that I refer to now sometimes when people ask me to speak. And I had a guy that was very influential in my life. I met him in Cincinnati. He was one of our coaches, and he was he had a really decorated career. He played 17 years, and I remember as a young player sitting there in the batting cage under the stands in the stadium in Cincinnati Riverfront at the time. And I looked at him and I said, how did you do it? And he said, what do you mean, how did I do it? I said, you played 17 years in the big leagues with this constant every day, the press in your face. Everybody knows when you stink. Everybody knows everything you're doing all the time. How did you deal with that? And he said, it was pretty simple. He said, I ran hard, I played hard, and I drank hard. And to me, it kind of hit me, because I was a drinker, but I was just a casual. I was a social drinker. And he goes, yep, when rain or shine, whether I did good, whether I did bad, indifferent. After the game, I go to the hotel bar if we're on the road, or I have a couple beers or some wine every night, because I'm not going to go home, lay on my pillow, look at the ceiling and think about it all night. And I learned really quick that that's a pretty good remedy. And after the game, I started making it a part of my routine. A couple beers, and it started off that way. 2-3 beers. Hey, I just had a rough day. Bad. I was 0 for 4. We lost. But I found that I could get out of my head, and I wouldn't go home and think about it and grind on it.
So that was kind of a like flipping the switch at the end of your busy day.
It was a precursor. It was something I did. It was routine. And it was definitely a precursor of things to come. I was never doing anything silly. I was never forgetting anything. I wasn't making bad decisions. And, but like I said, as this is a very progressive thing. And as I got into my 30s and I started to attain a lot more success, seemed like the beers went from 2 or 3 to 4 or 5, and occasionally now mix it in a vodka tonic because, wow, that was quick and that felt really good going down. Still, monitoring it, very functioning, never missing flights or not showing up or going missing for a couple of days. Nothing like that happened to me. And at the end of my career, though, when I was 36 or 37 years old, I came home, and now I've got the rest of my life. And I remember some people really close to me, my wife at the time, my mother, would come up to me and say, Bret, you drink a lot. And I just thought, well, who are they to tell me I drink a lot? I've done all these things. I've got all these accolades. And, now looking back on it, and this is about 13 years ago, there was something there. And so what did I do? The typical behavior, especially me at the time. I'm just finishing up a 14-year Major League Baseball career, and nobody was going to tell me what to do or what not to do. And I would conceal it, and I would go on the golf course and have 4 or 5, and then come home and have a beer. And the next thing you know, my wife at the time would say, hey, you're doing much better. You're just having a beer or 2 every night. And that went on for a while too. And it just slowly got progressive and worse and worse. And next thing you know, I went to a rehab. I went to the rehab with an open mind. I went there. It was my choice, actually. I had gotten to a point where I just thought, I want to nip this in the bud. And I went there and I got educated a little bit on alcoholism. And I was showed up at every class, and I was there, and I didn't miss a beat. And for the first time, when I was thinking about it, even though I wasn't a drinker or a partier early in my life, I'd really never been truly sober for any extended period, whether it was a beer here or a beer there. Back when I was in my social drinking days, I was always having a couple. And that kind of dawned on me. So for the first time, my first rehab, I went 30 days, and I was, at the time I was sober. I was dry, some people might say, but nevertheless, I didn't have it in my system. I started to feel much better, and, kind of had a little pep in my step when I came out of there. Problem is, that's all I did is I cleaned up my act for about 30 days. Didn't do a program after that. Did no work on myself. I just thought, well, I don't have anything in my system. And eventually, as most people will find out that go down this road, is next thing you know, you're at the bar and you're drinking again. Went to another rehab, went to another rehab. And Scotty, when we met, had to be 7, 8 years now. I was in and out of sobriety then. I'd get a couple months, and the next thing you know, I'd show up and, pretending to do my thing, but really wasn't doing it. And about coming up on about 39 months for me now of sobriety.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And for the first time, it's true sobriety for me. I'd had some times where I went without drinking and didn't have anything in my system, but I got to a point where I had to make a real change this time. The old stuff wasn't working. Too many times have I got it this time. Rehab. I got it this time, and I never got it this time because I never did any work, and I never really looked at myself honestly. I knew I had an issue, and I was willing to admit that, but that's all I would do, and I didn't want to do any of the work that came with it in this recovery process. And for the first time, I met a friend that was a golfing buddy of mine. Nothing away from the golf course, but time to time I'd go to the club and we'd have a men's game in the afternoon. And once in a while I'd get paired up with him, and there was something different about it. And I went up to him one day. I think I had had a couple beers, and I kind of poked at him and I said, something's effed up about you. And he kind of looked at me and he laughed. And it was probably obvious to everybody at that point that I'd like to party and I'd like to drink. And he said, yeah, I'm in recovery, and I'm a crackhead, and I'm 6 years sober. Now, this was always a well-to-do, well-dressed man, played a really good game of golf, kind to a fault, always the consummate gentleman. And he said that to me, and I remembered that, coming up on 39 months, and I gave him a phone call, and I said, I want to do this for real, and I want to get serious about it. And he said, I'd love to help you in the process, and will you listen to everything I tell you to do? And I said, sure, I will. And for the first time, I actually did, and I followed through, and I did all the work. I think that I needed to do. And I really did have a shift in my brain and in my mind. And it's not an option for me these days. And I use this scenario all the time that if we're driving down the freeway in your car, I always had that window cracked. It was always maybe one day, I can, and it always seemed that the better I was doing in sobriety, that window would crack a little more, like, oh, I can handle it this time. This is crazy stuff. And we say it's cunning and baffling. It really is, because just to, when you're at the bottom of the barrel and you're looking up and you're thinking, wow, I'd do anything, just get this out of my system. Don't take away the willingness to drink or the craving to drink. We forget how bad it really is until we go down that rabbit hole again. And I had finally gotten tired of going down those rabbit holes, and I reached out for help. I worked a program. I continue to work a program in recovery. And I truly have had a change that I can't explain. I don't want to say it's magic, but it's faith-based. I keep God at the center of my program, and it has really worked for me. And I have a lot of friends. I say this all the time. 80% of my friends before were not sober people, and 20% were. It seems like in the last 3 years, that's kind of flipped. And 80% of my interactions and 80% of my friends are sober and doing some sort of program in recovery. And I still have my buddies. I got a lot of buddies that drink and drink socially. Just because somebody has some beers or has some drinks doesn't make them like me. That's what make this world go round. But I don't know. I think service has been a big part of me, being of service. Talking to another alcoholic, really, really on a daily basis, reaching out, when I'm not feeling right or there's something off. And I'm just really happy where I am right now. I failed enough times in sobriety to know that I don't have this thing. This isn't like, I've got the rest of my life to live. And I've got enough experience on the failing side that I don't want to do that anymore. So for me, it's not an option anymore. And I truly believe that God has taken away the craving to drink alcohol. And I can honestly say, and like, once again, referring to 39 months, because of what I feel is the grace of God, I have not even thought one time, it hasn't even been a fleeting thought. We talk about in some programs how we have fleeting thoughts, and that's what they are. They're fleeting thoughts. And if you do the right things, those thoughts go away. I haven't even had a fleeting thought, but I'm also not naive enough to think the rest of my life that might not be there. But at this point in my life, I think I have the tools to deal with them if they do pop up. But it's been a wild ride. But I feel very blessed. I have 4 wonderful kids that I get to be a sober, present dad with. I know they appreciate it. I get to be a good friend and a reliable friend. And that for some dark times in my life, for some, a 4 or 5 or 6 year period, that wasn't always the case. And it wasn't because I was a bad guy and I didn't want to show up. It's just, that's how we behave when we're in our disease. And I've done that a long enough time, as many times as I never want to do that again. When I tell you I'm going to be there, whether it be a friend or a family member, I want you to be able to count that I'll be there. And sobriety is remarkable. And it's something that we all say, oh, I wish I would have done this years ago. Well, I'm glad I got to do it for real. And because a lot of people don't make it out of their addiction. They have grave consequences. I was fortunate enough to get a handle on it at this stage of my life. And of course, I wish I would have been able to do this 15 years ago. But it is what it is. There's no looking back. What's in the past is in the past, and all I can look forward to is moving forward and helping another alcoholic.
Yeah. Hope you don't mind. I'm going to give you some feedback because, I am a body language expert, and watching you share your story. And we should put a pin in it that the last time you and I did something like this, you came into the interview and you were actually under the influence. And I'd said to you, you still want to go forward? And you go, yeah, it'll be different today than it was the last time we did an interview. And it's actually our first interview, but because I know you get interviewed, I'm sure, a lot. And watching you today, I thought originally you look like you're kind of smirking, but that you're actually smiling, and you can actually hear your heart in your story today. And that's really, because I haven't actually, seen you for a couple of years, but we've spoken briefly on and off, and you take my phone calls, which is, Mike will probably tell you that's kind of unusual anyway. And you respond quickly but just listening to you.
I do have charity in my heart, Scott.
I know.
Picking up your phone.
Exactly.
Right, go ahead.
And I consider that what some of your community give back, and I appreciate that. But it's really nice to listen to you today and hear your heartfelt story, and the way you talk about it, and the sense that you project right now. It's different. You can for someone who knew you from before. I mean, obviously I didn't know you in the world of sports, but seeing the difference today is day and night. So it's really good to have you here talking about that story. So Bret, tell us what would you tell a family right now that has somebody who maybe is going through what you went through? What would you tell a family? How would you suggest, give them ideas, or from your experience, strength and hope, what would you tell a family? Here's some ideas I think might be helpful. If they called you and said, hey, Bret, I got a son, I got a daughter, I got an aunt, I got an uncle, I got a significant other that really seems to be, and I've heard your story, what would you tell them?
Well, because now I'm in this world, and I'm talking to these guys. I've got a couple buddies right now that are sober men that are having trouble with some loved ones, and it's really easy for us. And I know you're in this field and an expert at it, so I know what the advice is. And fortunately, to this point in my life, I've never had to deal with somebody that was that close to me or a family member where I had to make those tough decisions. But I know enabling does not work. I know that for a fact. I also know that whoever the person is having the struggles with, is going to make that choice to get clean and sober when they're ready to make that choice, and nobody else is going to make it for them. I've had a ton of enablers in my life, and I think it was probably because of the field that I was in. And it was basically, especially when I was playing, we don't care what you do, you can do anything you want, just make sure you show up and play well. And that's all anybody cared about, was the bottom line. I've had enablers since then, that because of the life I'd led and who I was, they let me get away with a lot more. And now being in a program and living this life, I'm always there for anybody that would reach out. I have friends that reach out to me. It could be for a talk. It could be for a meeting for coffee with somebody going through similar things I went through. All I can be there for them is to share my experience, strength, and hope. I think that's great. But they're going to do it when they're going to do it. And I'll bend. If I can look in your eyes, like you said, reading body language, if I can look in your eyes, I know if you're serious or not, or I know if you're holding on by a branch, you just want to be rescued until you get to your next place. But if I see that look in your eyes that you really want this thing, I'll give you everything I got, and I'll be there for you till the end. If I find that you're not serious and you're just jerking me around, well, I'll tell you what, come back to me when you are serious, and hopefully between then and now, you don't die. And I know it sounds dire, and I know it sounds maybe a little more than tough love, but that's the way this disease is. It's nothing to mess around with, and we're all out there and we're all vulnerable. I don't know if you want to call it lucky, but the places I've been and the parties I've gone to come out relatively unscathed. I've had some consequences through my life, but I think I've been one of the lucky ones that's come out rather unscathed, and I thank God for that, because a lot of things could have happened when I was out there, behaving sometimes the way that definitely now I don't approve of or condone. But that's what I would tell a family member. It's the enabling is really what gets you, because when you have a loved one going through it, I couldn't imagine how hard it is to not necessarily turn your back on them, but not be willing to to enable them along in their whatever it is, whether it's drugs, alcohol. That's not going to make them wake up any sooner. But I think, that being said, it's easier said than done until you're actually in that position. I think for me to have a tough love relationship with a friend, although that might be a little bit tough, a lot easier than, say, a son or a daughter when if they were to go through something that I went through. My parents were there with me when I went through it, and to this day, I thank them. I get on my mom a little bit. I said, Mom, you're a little bit of an enabler, but she loved me that much, and she got to see me in some dark places. And once again, I count my blessings. I haven't had to see a son or a daughter in a dark place, and knock on wood, I'm not out of the woods yet. I still got young kids, but I couldn't imagine that. What I put my parents through, what I put my friends through, what I put, all the people that are close to me and that I love. But once again, just being on the other side now and getting to live this life and getting to be a reliable, first and foremost, a good dad, to be the best dad I can. That's my most important job in life. And I always thought my most important job was being a big league player and going around town and helping kids with this or that. And life's a lot bigger than that. What I did on the baseball field, that's never going to go away. 100 years from now, you're going to be able to pick a book up and find out what I did on the baseball field. But what the impact I can make in my kid's life, that's first and foremost my most important job that I think I've been given as a father.
So has your profession reached out to you? Because I know, I would assume, I'm guessing now, that high profile sports figures and different levels of that kind of notoriety that happens, especially young stars that are coming up that may be impacted by, anesthetizing themselves or self-medicating. And, I think you and I talked, about years ago with how big steroids were in the sports world. So are they calling you when, the owners or the, coaches or managers ever say, hey, Bret, I got a guy or, a person on the staff that really could use some mentoring? Do they call you and say, hey, can you take some time here and to help, not only the team, but help the team player and their family? Do you get those kind of calls?
I definitely do. But not in a professional, should I say a professional capacity. It's not like, well, Bret's, this is just like somebody would reach out to a family member that knows that they've been through something maybe that they know one of their loved ones or friends are going through. So yeah, I get reached out to in the sports world time to time, but nothing in an official capacity. You touched on it, Scott, a little bit. A few years ago, I was talking to Major League Baseball and the alumni about setting up some sort of program. I think it would be great, but to my knowledge, if there is something in place, it's very low key, and I think it's tough when you're young and you're making a ton of money, and sometimes you got to fall on your own. You don't always make the best decisions. I don't know if you would have turned to me, come to me at age 32 and said, hey, you really need to do this. Hey, Scotty, thanks for the advice, but I got a job to do here, and I just got this all under control, until you don't have it under control. But I'm definitely available and always willing to pick up the phone, always willing to help any way I can, but nothing in a professional capacity. And I don't know if there is like I said, they reached out to me years back, but I don't think nothing definitely came to fruition. I don't know if since then in recent years that it has, but it definitely could be a positive thing, because I think in the sports world, there's a lot more people going through it than you see on the surface. A lot of people hiding it pretty well. That maybe, I always think about it. If I could help one guy, if I talk to 100 people, but I can help one, I did my job. So I'm always here, always available, but definitely to this point, not in a professional capacity.
Okay. Swing back to sports real quick. So biggest highlight of your baseball career, what was it? If you can name one thing.
I get asked that a lot, and I really don't have a highlight. I've got a lot of great highlights, but I don't really put one above the other. I never won a World Series. I got to go to a World Series, but there was a lot of little highlights. The first time I got called to the big leagues, that's any young kids that dreams of that. What a highlight that is! My first All-Star game, first time I won a Gold Glove. I got to play with my brother for a year. That was pretty cool. In 1994, my dad was a bench coach. I was on a team in Atlanta. We won 104 games, and in 2001, I played for a Seattle Mariner team that broke the all-time record. We won 116 games. Those are definitely highlights, and but just my overall career, and wow, and you get to reflect when you get a little bit older, sometimes we don't always appreciate those things when we're going through them because it's such a grind. And it's nothing against the player that's in the middle of his career, because it is a high intense stressful job, and Major League Baseball doesn't go away. You play every day. You play 162 games, and if you stink, guess what? You're going to be in the lineup tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day, and there's nowhere to hide. So a lot of players in their career, I think, and players ask me, what's the one advice you'd give me? I'd say, enjoy yourself a little bit more. It is a grind. It's hard. It's important what you do on the field. It's your livelihood. It's how they determine what you get paid and whether you get to wear a uniform next year. That's all important stuff, but enjoy it a little bit more. Because I think as young, and I think it has to do with just being lack of experience, life experience. We, as professional athletes, we have a lot of experiences that most people don't get to realize in their special times, but we still need that life experience. I just wish, if the one thing I could go back and do, just kind of appreciate a little bit more putting on that uniform every day for 14 years. Because you just, once you do it, it's kind of assumed, it's expected. No, this is just what I do. I've always done this, and I'll always do this until you don't do it anymore. And then you look back and, I miss a lot about the game. I don't miss chasing that breaking ball in the dirt. But I do miss going to the ballpark and that camaraderie that you have. And for so long, we have that structure. Every year we train in the off season, we go to spring training, we play our season, and we go home and we go on vacation. Then we train in the off season, we go to spring training, we play the season. We do that for a long time. And then all of a sudden you're retired and you go home, and it's a little bit of a shock. Like, this is real life. So, we've all got to go through that. Some of us handle it better than others. But it's something we all got to go through, and interesting. This life is interesting.
So tell me, what question would you like me to ask you that I haven't asked you?
What question?
What is it you'd like us to know that maybe you don't normally get asked?
What made you truly get sober this time, Bret?
Okay, go ahead.
I think as a professional athlete, as somebody that's always put my physical training, gym, my diet at the forefront as really important things in my life, being fit, almost to a certain age, I almost felt like Superman. And I was walking around with a cape, and I can do anything I want because I eat really good. I go to the gym every day. Look at me. And the youth runs out. And one day you wake up and you realize that you're not Superman. And your body, as you get older, although there's definitely things you can do to slow down that process and to live the best life you can. But as we get older, our body doesn't put up with abuse that we put it through like it does when you're 25 years old. And for the first time in my life, I felt vulnerable. I felt that if I kept going down this road, something really bad was going to happen to me. And I'd never felt that before in my life. I'd always felt, I'll kick this thing's butt. I always do. And snap back like that. All of a sudden, I wasn't snapping back like that. was a little longer when I'd go on a week binge, and then coming out of it, the time to come out of it took longer and longer and longer. And that was a wake up call for me. Like, I'm not, it seems like when you're a young kid, you can jump out of bed, jump in the batting cage, and your first swing's as hard as it can be. I used to go to the golf course. I wouldn't have to warm up, go to the range. My first tee ball, I'm going to swing as hard as I can. And everyone will look at you, especially older people, and say, how do you do that? And I go, what do you mean, how do I do that? Doesn't everybody do that? Well, today I got to the golf course. It takes me 20 minutes to get ready to get to the first tee. So I'm fielding my oats as an older man now. I'm in my 50s now. So I used to take this for granted, but like I said, this last time for me, I had a real humanizing experience that I'm not Superman. And like I said, I just had something in my mind say, something bad could happen to me if I continue to go down this road. And I want to be around for my kids, and I want to be able to live this life and enjoy the simple things. I wasn't enjoying the simple things anymore. Everything was about the party and the drink, and that's not how I was brought up. That's not how I was raised. And I was slowly becoming somebody that I didn't recognize, and I didn't want to be that guy anymore. And that was kind of a realization for me, and kind of a hit over the head that I don't know why or when. I just know it happened. And that's why when I covered earlier, we can always look back and go, oh, I wish I would have figured this out 15 years. I'm just fortunate and blessed that I figured it
out. Yeah. There's a great saying I like that what I used to do all night now takes me all night to do. Think about that.
Without a doubt.
So
I love going to bed at 9:30.
Yeah. And waking up.
Yeah.
And not having
waking up with a clear head.
Not having to call a bunch of people and, call your manager and your agent and your family, and the bed that you went to sleep in is the one you woke up in, because that was part of your plan. So I'm going to turn it back over to Michael. And Michael, do you have any questions for Bret?
I was just wondering, Bret, since alcohol became such a part of your baseball career towards the end there, when you retired, what was your decision to finally retire? Was it alcohol, or is it the trials of the alcohol in your body? What made you decide to give up your career?
That's a great point. And it's not talked about that often, because at the time when I retired, I thought I was retiring because I was just sick of playing. But what this does to you, what alcohol does to you, when you push it to the extremes, is it rips away your passion. And I had no passion for the game. I took it for granted. I had made a lot of money and had a lot of success, and I didn't need the headache anymore. But I wasn't sober. And at the time, I didn't know. I just thought, I don't need this anymore. I'm going to go off in the sunset and go on vacation and play golf for the rest of my life. Well, there's a lot more to life than that. But I think you hit on a really good point. I remember I was with it was 2006, and I was with the New York Mets. And I was in spring training. It was a new team for me. I was nearing the end of my career. I had come off not a very good year in 2005 in Seattle. And I had signed as a free agent with the Mets. I went to camp. And I remember there was a young shortstop playing for the Mets. And I was watching him as we were going through our drills. And for a veteran player in spring training, the drills that first week are not what we look forward to. It's very tedious. You just want to get off. But I remember watching this kid during batting practice, and he was 21 years old at the time, and he was shagging like he was my little kid that I brought to the ballpark. I mean, this was the joy on his face and the love he had for this game. It kind of took me back, and I said, I remember when I was him, and I had that I couldn't get enough of it. I was at the ballpark from sun up to sundown, and I just loved it. And at that point in my life, and I think alcohol was a big part of it for me, I didn't have that anymore. It had ripped that passion that I had had my whole life away from me. And it didn't come back until I cleaned up my act. And I've got that passion. I got that sparkle in my eye. I love to do things. I love hanging out. When you're going through it and your kids ask you, hey, Dad, let's go to the beach. I don't want to go to the beach. Now it's like I love living life. It's cool. And the most I don't know. It's just, it's something you go through. It's my life. It's my experiences, that things that I went through, but definitely it was a combo. But at the time I had no idea that it had anything to do with that. I just thought it was, it was time for me to go on. But I think about it all the time. Would it have changed me? I don't know, because I was partying pretty good before age hit me, and things were going pretty good for me. When I was drinking pretty good, my body was reacting. I was young enough that I could fight that off, and I was having a lot of success. So when people ask you, if you turn it back, did alcohol affect? I don't know. I don't know if how much it affected my career. Seems like some years it helped me until it didn't help me, and then it really hurt. If that makes sense, I don't know.
Yeah. I just want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us this Saturday. I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your story. It's very powerful, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to what you've been through. Not a lot of people are professional baseball players, but a lot of people are drug addicted and alcohol addicted. So what you've gone through and your honesty has been a blessing. To see us out for today's episode, why don't you give us a quote that you feel is something that's positive for you and you think about a lot? It could be anything.
Okay. And I think I touched on a little bit earlier when I don't know, one of the topics we were discussing, but I think it's pretty simple. I don't know if it's a quote, but it's just kind of a saying, and you can say it however you want. It's in this life is too short. Sometimes stop and smell the roses.